welcome everyone to what's a very special evening, and it's actually been getting more and more special. And I'm going to start out by telling you some secrets. The first secret is one of the key parts of being able to stay married for 40 years is to always give your wife the last word. So Beryl will be concluding tonight, which means that I am unleashed to make some introductory comments, and I'm going to talk too long because I'm going to weave into my introductory comments the pre-concert talk, because we're very fortunate to have a world-class group of musicians here tonight to play some music that I think I will be able to explain is very important to us. Now, another secret that I have to tell you is that in a marriage, if it's successful, your tastes will merge and sometimes converge and sometimes even cross. For example, when I met Beryl, I was not an animal person, not at all. But Beryl made me into an animal person. This is a Darcy, our alpha cat, and he likes to co-author papers with me, and he likes to tell me when it's time to go to bed. Now, Beryl was not born in the saddle of a bicycle, but she very gamely, when we sold our place in Woods Hole, agreed to accompany me on a number of trips. And I found that the hook to get her to go on a bicycle trip was to go where there was great wine. So for you Burgundy fans, this is the Clos Vougeot, and we also love Bordeaux wines. And so here is Beryl in an alleyway that separates the property of the Château Souche-Lafitte from this wonderful resort called Les Sources de Caudalie. And I think about half a dozen people in the room have been with us to visit these two sites with their extraordinary comfort and extraordinary wine. Now, Beryl got so into the bike trips that she even challenged one of the guides to a push-up contest right in front of this particular chateau. Compare the military form of Beryl's push-ups before she had a back operation to our guide. But one thing that we didn't have to grow together to appreciate, one thing that was a shared value from the very get-go, was a reverence for the music of Johann Sebastian Bach. And you know, studies show, this is a doctor counseling his patient, studies show that people who allow art in their lives can substantially reduce their dependency on selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors. The non-physicians in the room can say that quickly. And indeed, this instrument, this William Dowd harpsichord, was on our first date. My mother-in-law, Annette Ben Asraf, took this instrument to Vanderbilt Hall, to the student refectory of the medical school, tuned it, and played Bach at a concert that was our first date. There's Annette and my father-in-law, Baruch, 40 years ago, it seems like 20 years, but time goes so quickly. 40 years ago, almost to the hour, at the Harvard Club where we got married. Annette was an incredibly talented musician. She had perfect pitch. She could sight read anything in any clef. And in fact, the soundtrack of much of our life on the 30th story of the Jamaica Way Tower was my mother-in-law playing. She had one little harpsichord, a chalice in the bedroom, and the Dowd was in the living room. And we had, as the soundtrack for our life for decades, the French suites, the English suites, and the well-tempered clavier, and I think our children will attest that that was the accompaniment to our daily life. So Bach was integrated into our daily life. I don't know why she didn't play the partitures. We can discuss that later. So, you know, when Beryl walked up the aisle in the Asclepian room with her father, she chose to have played as the music the in-theme for the radio show that she hosted on New York radio, WKCR, Kings Crown Radio, which is the Columbia radio station. It's probably the college radio station with the broadest audience in the history of humankind. And she chose this trumpet ordinary by Jeremiah Clark, which is often misattributed to Purcell. I had to include that. I'm a professor. And by the way, Paul, you may recognize this young man, and you may recognize the Ben Ashraf faces there. And there's going to be a quiz sometime during the night where I'm going to ask the cardiologist to identify this person. I think many of you recognize Curtis Laffer from that. This happy couple is walking down the aisle, and as the recessional for our wedding, we chose, and it was easy to agree, on a piece by Bach. And we chose the Gavotte from Cantata 202 by Hitler Betrübte. And now I have to take you on a little side trip to Emmanuel Church, which is the home of Emmanuel Music, which is an organization which is rooted in Bach performance and as reverent of that composer and his body of work as we are in our family. Now, my daughter got very concerned because she said, you're spending an awful lot of time at this Episcopal church, although it's a very welcoming church, as you can see. And I told her last week, when we Ubered over to Cambridge after attending Cantata, that I had the answer for her tonight. I said, I've got this covered. So Brigitte, don't worry. On Sundays, it's an Episcopal church, but on Friday night, it's a Reformed chapel. But the real reason that we're so connected to Emmanuel Church is because it is a temple for music, and particularly the music of Johann Sebastian Bach. This is not an advertisement, okay? Harvard, you're supposed to declare conflicts of interest in Bach and only use generic names. So I will only use generic names here. But this is their Bach Cantata service where they embed in the liturgy a Bach Cantata just as Bach meant it to be. And you can go like I did on walking off the street, no tickets required. You're welcomed by everyone in the church. And you can, as I did on the first, hear Cantata 206, Gottes Leib ist die allerbeste Zeit, which is a Trauerrede, funeral cantata. And it's also called Actus Tragicus. And those of you who were at this service, the meeting that I arranged a few days after our colleague and friend Ken Baughman was run over in a fatal accident at the American Heart Association 6 years ago, almost to the week. I played when we were walking into the room the poignant and very moving Sinfonia from Gottes Zeit, which has that beautiful duet and quarter legato, and that I thought was the exactly appropriate piece for that very, very sad moment. Last weekend, before we went to meet Brigitte and Melissa and our beautiful little granddaughter Lucy, who many of you met this evening, we just walked in off the street and heard a world-class performance of Bach's magnificent Magnificat in D, a piece that actually, when it was performed by Leonard Bernstein on TV in the 1950s, is one of the reasons that I fell in love with Bach. And the first soprano duet, the Exultavit Spiritus Meus, was sung by Kendra Coulter. Now, in our day jobs, Errol's and my day job, and that many of you, we take very talented and bright young people and ask them to do something very hard with us, and that is to master the threatened art of medicine. And in my laboratory life, I help my trainees wrestle secrets out of nature, something also very hard. And I don't have the talent to do what Kendra and her partner in founding the Bach Institute, which grew out of Emmanuel Music, do. They take incredibly talented and brilliant young people and impart the combined wisdom and experience of decades of Bach performance performed in Emmanuel Music. And this is an activity which is so valuable to us and reflects what we would do if we really had talent, so much that Errol and I are very ardent supporters of this activity. And by the way, for the uninitiated, there's always meaning in everything that Bach did. This, of course, is his monogram, his initials, JSB. Well, here are the kids from a couple of years ago, and there's Peggy playing her oboe. I've been a Peggy Pearson groupie since I heard her play the St. Matthew Passion, which has many oboe solos in the 1980s. We were both teenagers at the time. And here's Kendra introducing one of the concerts. And because the cantata, which was the source of the recessional at our wedding 40 years ago tonight, was from Weichert nur betrübte Schatten, and because it features a solo oboe and a soprano solo, the very voices of the founders of the Bach Institute, it had to be that we would ask them to play tonight and share it with you. And we were absolutely thrilled that in their incredibly busy schedule that we were able to cajole them to come and play this cantata for us tonight. Now, it's particularly difficult for them because tomorrow night is Chamber Series 2 concert of another group that Peggy has founded called Windsor Music. And I'll show you their program. It's going to be in Brookline at St. Paul's Episcopal Church. I believe that tickets could be obtained if you'd like to speak to Peggy later on. And also, a little advertisement here, we're going to have the 5th annual Bach Institute this winter. So joining Kendra and Peggy are the members of La Fenice, Catherine Cho, Maria Lambros, Marcy Rosen, Diane Walsh, and Mitsuru is the student who's joining them tonight. And this is the program that they will be playing tomorrow, a mixture of classics with some more modern work, and even something French. So I think this is a wonderful treat for us to have world-class musicians come and open this evening for us tonight. By the way, La Fenice, maybe the musicians will tell us why they took that name, of course means Phoenix, and there's a famous opera house, La Fenice, in Venice. And you know, the Phoenix arises from the ashes, and there was arson. Talk to Electricians Union, okay, that burned La Fenice, and they had to reconstruct it. And I'm interested in popular music too, that is opera. And I collect opera houses, and so when La Fenice was being reconstructed, this is one of the frescoes that they were restoring at La Fenice. So I had to get that in because we have La Fenice joining us tonight. Okay, now the hard part here. Weichert nur betrübte Schatten is a Bach cantata. It's an occasional cantata. It's not a church cantata, but it has some of the structural elements of a church cantata. Bach's cantatas usually start with a problem, and you wend your way, sometimes in a tortuous pathway, towards some kind of a solution, or resolution, or resignation. And this cantata starts with a problem, and you don't have to go farther than the 3rd word of the title to see what the problem is. It's darkness. Darkness. And what did Bach mean by darkness? There was a darkness you read about in the newspaper. Attacks in Paris, friends who are killed running in a motor vehicle accident, colleagues who are trying to minister to the sick who are murdered in the ambulatory clinic, war, pestilence, death, inhumanity, injustice. And then there's the darkness that's closer in. The things that happen to your family, illness, suffering, the death of a wife, boy, Bach knew about that. The death of a child, Bach really knew about that. He sired 20 children, of whom many did not make it to adulthood. And then there's the inner darkness that's within each individual, the demons, the doubt, the depression. And all of that is in the work that Bach spun out through his career. And in fact, the cantatas of Bach, the entire oeuvre is sort of a playbook for life, if you delve into it. And the problem is not just in the words, but Bach conveyed it musically, but very economically and very subtly, with this note on the syllable, trüb, the darkness. And you will hear this note is the 5th syllable that Kendra will sing. And you know, it's not an accident that this is an accidental, that is a sharp or a flat. And I will illustrate that theory with some things I pulled up this afternoon. But the darkness is illustrated here just with one note. It comes back in the da capo, but he very economically reminds us that perfection is just out of reach, and the darkness is not far from us, no matter what the situation we're in. Now, my friends and family are saying, where is Peter going with this? The kids are saying, when do we get to eat? Beryl is saying, where's the mute button? And the musicians are saying, oh my gosh, Cheryl. But remember, it's not just the problem, it's getting to the solution. And actually the solution is right there in front of you. First of all, there's the title of this cantata, which is Weiche nur betrübte Schatten, which means, part ye dark shadows. And in fact, you will hear in just a few moments the unbelievable staggered entry of the strings in this ascending, heavenward movement, and the oboe coming in contrary motion in the descending line. When I close my eyes, I can see the dark clouds parting. So the solution's right there, embedded. And I was thinking this afternoon, the syllable for darkness, trüb, comes up fairly often in Bach's work. And here's the whole cantata, we listen to Trübsal. And if you look here, in the seventh number, here is a song that you all know. You all know because it's a joyful song, Wie will ich dich freuen. We call it in English, My Spirit Be Joyful. You all know this tune. And in this tune, all of a sudden, there's a blue note that comes up, okay? A flat, just like that E flat that Kendra will sing, okay, on the syllable trüb. And just in case you didn't get it, it comes up again and the bass gets to have the blue note, okay, the flat on the syllable meaning darkness. So even in this joyful movement, which we all use as a celebratory song, Bach reminds us that it's almost an Orpheic reminder that perfection, beauty, is just out of reach. One glance backwards and it's gone. So he always reminds us about that. And there's another place where the syllable trüb comes up. This is from the Matthew Passion. Meine Seele ist betrübt bis an den Tod. This one has a lot of chromaticism and a lot of color, a lot of blue notes, because it's my soul is troubled, is darkened unto death. And look, the syllable tot, trübt, is a flat. So the chromaticism was no accident. It was a coloration that had a message for us all. Now, the solution, as I say, was right here. The shadows are parting. And the next thing that you'll hear is what you need when the clouds part. We need the sun. And who brings the sun? Brigitte teaches mythology. The sun god is Apollo. And how does Apollo bring the sun? In his chariot. And who bears the chariot? His horses. And how do the horses go? Swiftly. Okay? And you will hear in a few moments the trot of the horse. If I were really a musician, I would play it for you, but you're going to hear it in a moment. And the genius of Bach is that he only gives you the suggestion here. He reinforces the trot a little bit. But your ears, he makes you work. He brings you into the creative process. He makes you imagine that trotting going through. I defy you to not hear the trotting throughout this piece. Now, the speed is conveyed by all those 16th notes that we're going to hear. And I think this is the cavalry of the sun god riding in to dispel darkness. And everyone in the room understands the allegory here in a wedding cantata. And that is that the sun, it's not a pagan god. The sun is the love and the relationship that you have. And the light of my life is sitting right here. And the illumination that protects me from darkness and dispels the darkness is Beryl. And the happiest day of my life, the luckiest day of my life, was 40 years ago tonight, when we walked down the aisle to the last movement of this cantata, and my life has been illuminated by her luster ever since then. Now, this may be one step too far, but bear with me, I'm a professor, remember? Now, in art, as in medical imaging, sometimes it's what you don't see or hear that's important. And Bach was the master of counterpoint. He wrote the book on counterpoint, the Kunst auf Ruhe. He wrote complex and intricate fugues with the ease with whom a mortal might sneeze. Yet, in Cantata 202, I don't hear much formal counterpoint. There's beautiful, there's imitation, there's intertwining of two voices, perfect for a wedding cantata. But I don't hear any of the formal fugues which populate so much of Bach's work. Now, does that mean that Bach thought that merit was a conflict-free zone? Because counterpoint is intrinsically fuga. It's a flight. You have to have theme and counter-theme, and it's intrinsic conflict in the structure of a fugue. No, I don't think so. Bach lived a very real life. He had a wayward son. He had to go teach the students. He had to get the parts copied for Sunday's performance. He was tortured by his bosses who didn't understand his genius. He was constantly fighting with the town fathers and the church officials. And I think he realized that life was not perfect. But I think he thought on a wedding day, he didn't need to pull that contrapuntal toolkit out. And he really softened this piece by not having the very severe structure of a fugue. Now, Bach was immortal, but the poets that wrote the words were not. And this is the next to the last movement, the recitative. I don't know if we're going to hear that tonight, but I just want to make a point, is that the poet gave him these words, Kein Fall noch Donner knall. May no sudden fall or thunderclap disturb your amorous desires. To a Baroque composer, this would be catnip. A Baroque composer would be immediately tempted to portray musically the fall and the thunderclap. Could Bach depict thunder in his music? You bet he could. Well, he had the whole tone scale in O Ewigkeit Donnerwort in the last chorale. And most famously, this is a fearful moment which gives you goosebumps in the Matthew Passion, when he puts the two antiphonal choruses together in unison for this very formal fugue, this frightening fugue, where he says, sind Blitzen, sind Donner, in Wolken verschwunden. And he paints the word thunder here with this melismatic line. Okay? So he knew how to paint the word thunder. So there it is, by the way, the master's own handwriting. It's amazing. So what did he do? What were his artistic choices on the wedding day? Okay. Between two dances, which we're going to hear. He softened. He vetoed the poet. He did depict the fall here with 11 descending notes going gracefully from the voice into the continuo. By the way, this is a recitative, 6 measure recitative. But look what he did. And the word thunder, softened. No drama here. So I think he did this for two reasons. One is his intellectual rigor. Well, in the first movement, we made the parts the clouds part. So why are we talking about thunder here? We did away with that in the first movement. And the second thing is I thought he thought it would be a bring down to have a thunderclap here at this particular moment. And by the way, the poet talks here about chaste love and amorous desires. Here's a picture from our wedding. Those who know Beryl know she was mugging for the camera with that demure downward glance. That's not Beryl. But speaking of amorous desires, just follow my gaze and read my mind. Okay, so the last two movements of this cantata go towards the resolution, the solution. They're dances. Dances are very common in Bach's cantatas. You might have a sad or stately or solemn saraband. You might have a soothing Sicilienne. You might have a merry minuet. But Bach did not label them as such. He didn't have to, because this was not erudition. This was popular culture. Probably on Saturday night they'd been dancing these dances. They didn't have to have them labeled. They knew them. But he took the trouble to put a title on this closing dance, the Gavotte. And I have to take, I don't know for sure, maybe the musicians can correct me, but this is the Gesellschaft edition. Bach-Gesellschaft edition from the mid-19th century, which is the Urtext. So I imagine that the editors didn't add that Bach must have written that on some version of the autograph. And why did Bach label this dance a gavotte? And especially after starting with such a solid start and this problem of darkness, which he was struggling to resolve, and the implication that love and marriage are a solution to the problem of darkness that surrounds us. Well, I think that what Bach was thinking is, let's celebrate love and marriage, and let's close this cantata with two dances, because he's saying to us, party on. So I'd like to now invite La Fenice and Kendra and Peggy to play large parts of the cantata by Hütten, now that you understand from a non-Bach scholar, from a non-musician, what it means to be.